Hi everyone, welcome back to this afternoon's Healthspan Show. We've had such a lot of interest in this session, so I'm really excited to bring to you our next discussion looking at reimbursement and access models for digital therapeutics. Now we're going to get straight into the discussion because we've got a lot to cover. So I'm very pleased to hand you over to your moderator for today. Ivan, over to you.
Thank you, Angela. Hi everyone, my name is Ivan. I'm a partner in McKinsey and I lead a lot of our work in tech forward innovation from technology council through business building, particularly in healthcare where I do most of my work. I will pass now to our panel participants, starting with Amir to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Ivan, and hello everyone. My name is Amir Zuhr. I'm the head of digital products at Takeda, former employee for Teva, where we established the first respiratory smart digital inhaler. Now working especially with digital health products by pharma to the market.
Thank you so much, Amir. And going in alphabetic order, Guido, you're the next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ivan. My name is Guido Hegener. I work as a managing partner with Digital Health Ventures, or DHV, which is a early stage venture capital fund based in Berlin, Germany.
Thank you very much, Guido. So over to Sylvain to introduce himself.
Thanks, Ivan, and good afternoon, everyone. Sylvain Hanssen. I'm the director for the e-health ecosystem at the Zur Rose Group, which is the largest and leading online pharmacy in Europe, previously with Walgreens Boots Alliance. And yeah, delighted to be here with this great group.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the introduction. So today we're talking about access and reimbursement models in digital health, but under access and reimbursement, we're also kind of taking a little bit broader lens around the business models. So with that said, I would really start, with the broader question for three of you. What does the current landscape looks like when it comes to access and monetization models for digital health solutions? And given, Guido, that you're seeing many kind of business plans, business models, and so forth, I will kick the round off with you this time, and just a little bit to explain the nuances that you see and how are different companies trying to monetize, and then we'll continue with other panels.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So happy to take or to start taking that one. I mean, it's a topic that you could elaborate on probably for not only 5 minutes or 10, but hours and hours, since it's a quite complex topic. And I mean, the landscape in Europe is not just one landscape, but of course can be very different from country to country and from healthcare system to system. But I think what's probably worth mentioning to this regard is that there has been quite a huge development, for example, in Germany throughout the last 1 or 2 years, which has been quite significantly boosted by the Digital Supply Act, or DVG, Digitales Versorgungsgesetz. So to that regard, we see that telemedicine solutions are being reimbursed, that something has happened that only a few years back was quite unimaginable, which is that people can just use an app, call a doctor, the doctor can issue a sick leave, you can get a prescription, and you can even go to a pharmacy and actually take this prescription there to have the medication. But also a lot has happened not only on the telemedicine side, but also for a lot of other digital health solutions, which are now finally able to be reimbursed through the DiGA Fast Track, which is another element that has been introduced through the Digital Supply Act. So as of currently, I just checked, I checked the website today of DiGA, and I can see that 15 different solutions are now being reimbursed. And of course, this comes with a plethora of requirements for the developers that they need to fulfill. They need to go through a lengthy application process. They need to wrap their minds around medical device regulation and the certification, since this is a very important element of the DIGA and a necessary element. They need to take on information security management, and also, of course, have a plan for how to show medical benefit through the first 12 months that they will finally end up in reimbursement. So this is only to name one aspect of the recent developments. I mean, of course, there are other avenues into reimbursement as well. Also in Germany, there's a possibility for prevention-related solutions to obtain a certification from ZPP. You're able to enter into selective contracts bilaterally with health insurances, and there are also some other options. Obviously, Germany is not necessarily representative for the EU, and a lot is happening in other countries as well. And there I would like to mention that there have been a lot of developments in the UK as well as in France, and of course, obviously also in the Nordics, so namely Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. But yeah, I'll just stop talking here to also give you the chance to contribute to this discussion.
And, I mean, I will continue now on the roll with Sylvain, because Sylvain, I know you actually have extremely ambitious plans, seen with your acquisitions of Teleclinica and also, launch of Adipositas Care. So you really want to transform patient journeys with some of these digital health solutions. And with that experience, how do you see actually both models and also access and reimbursement? Because some models could include also, patients paying themselves or working with private payers. So to reflect on that, and then I have a specific question for this in this first chapter for Amir, but maybe I pass it over to you, because I mean you have been making some pretty bold moves recently in this field.
Thanks, Ivan. I think the first comment I would make is I think what's been interesting over the last 6 to 12 months is also like a kind of maturation of what digital health even means. I think we tend to bundle a lot of actually very different things into digital health. And we're starting to see a little bit the split of the business models and the organization. So, Teleclinic, which the Zur Rose Group acquired, is very much now with the progress in Germany. It's not a tool, it's a channel. Right? It's just healthcare. It's not digital health. It's just a way that you can talk to a doctor, and now it's reimbursed like if you were going to a physical visit. And I think that's a really good development, because there are tools that are independent, that are to stand on their own, and our tools are just tools. They serve a better channel. It's more convenient. It's better for patients. And we see the development. And I think France is a good example with the reimbursement of MoveCare for breast cancer monitoring. They're just using existing processes and codes that were in place for any other home care devices and just bringing digital as a new solution to it. Versus kind of DIGAs, which are more standalone condition management program on which you have to kind of create processes. And then you even have now, I think what's been also fascinating with COVID is seeing the rise of private out-of-pocket models. So, now you have, if you take the UK example, you can buy Headspace in a Boots pharmacy, right? It's just on a retail shelf where you can buy the subscription physically to an app. And it's just becomes another way to kind of consider digital, and it's just becoming part of the system. I think the one thing, like the kind of negative side of all this is access, and that's what we've seen also, and why we've been kind of investing in this space as a Zur Rose Group is access to the system, and market access and reimbursement doesn't necessarily mean you get more patients and more users. There's still, I would say, a disconnect in the system between having market access and actually making money out of it and having more users. And I think the DIGA reform is in a certain way a good/bad example of it, where the reform is great and is creating the right incentive in the system, but it's not necessarily been thought from a person experience, and how are you actually going to have access to DIGAs? How are doctors going to be trained on understanding what a DIGA is, how will it work, which patient to talk about it? It's been put out, and now kind of the system has to figure out. And I think that's probably anticipating some of the rest of the conversation, but I think that's where the next step, now that market access is maturing, is how do we get organized so that everybody understands how to make the most out of it, and how different stakeholders in the system can work together to drive adoption, which was hard before because you have people to pay in healthcare in Europe. It's pretty hard to get it. Now that it can be reimbursed doesn't still mean people will do it.
Close the circle. Thank you, Sylvain. This was great insights. And close the circle, Amir. You've been in some of these relatively complex, let's say, digital health products in your personal life, the combination of digital health and drug and so forth. So what's your experience generally, both on the business model side, but also, kind of when it comes to trying to reimburse this kind of things?
Yeah, and I think that we are like good insights here, and I would like maybe to bring my perspective, how to connect the business aspect into the product aspect. So when we're talking about reimbursement, we're talking about what are the services that we can provide and how we can connect them together. Because I think that until now, we have been through a discovery phase that we discover different phases, different product ideas. We can see tons of them in the market going for different directions, a lot of investment. And now we're starting to see the connection. So how to connect the digital therapeutic service into the software, the mobile app, the dashboard for the physician, how to bring all players to communicate to each other. This is kind of a new game that we are creating. We are changing roles and responsibility between patient, physician, pharma. When pharma is now dealing with direct customer or patient operation, this is something that we didn't see before. We didn't see pharma companies answer phone calls for patients about what is not working with a digital product. This is a new skill that we had to create in pharma in order to create this connection, and also to connect between physician to prescribe the digital therapeutic or the digital product, to work with the patient and to see how healthcare can come into home service to deliver the drug or the digital product at home, like we are going to discuss about it as well. So all that is kind of how you connect all together into one product. And I think this is what pharma is trying to do, to bring players together and to oversee the whole solution as one solution, one holistic solution. And I think this can bring acceleration to the value. Because if you bring a product, digital product for patients, and they cannot communicate with physicians, they cannot share the reports, probably the engagement will be low. They will not be able to create a new language with the physician. Every time that we go into the physician, they say, oh, I see this measurement with this digital product, and the physician will not be able to communicate with this digital product. They're kind of like not solving this problem. So we have to bring everyone together to create this one process, one language. And then I believe once we have that, the value can be accelerated, and then it will be easier to reimburse and for the payer to find better value with those products.
Thank you, Amir. Great insights, and I think we have people thinking the same here from different sides, like a kind of an online pharmacy and the pharma and the investor. So very nice to see this on the panel. I think looking forward, so now I more kind of ask you, what do you see today, and some reflections. We saw in COVID dramatic kind of uplift in use. So last I checked, some of the telemedicine providers in Europe, they had like 400-fold growth in the number of telemedicine consults. that were done over the platforms. And as we do kind of physician sentiment surveys within McKinsey, we are doing this actually regularly. We see that they don't expect that it will go away when the COVID passes. So people kind of know how to use it, are aware of the convenience and so forth. And Sylvain was also talking about the evolution of sort of health systems and acceptance on some of these things. So I want to ask now a forward-looking question, really. How do you see then this space evolving, both when it comes to access and reimbursement, but also more broadly, going forward, given these trends and on the tailwind of this trend of adoption and realization of value? So maybe I start this time with you, Sylvain, given that you triggered a point, and then I will pass it to Amir.
Yes, thanks. I think fully agree. I mean, the COVID has been a kind of almost once in a lifetime opportunity to disrupt the system. Everybody has probably seen this famous joke going around on LinkedIn and on various social media, which, asking the question of, what drive the digital transformational company? Was it the CEO, the CDO, or COVID? Right? And everybody taking COVID. And I think that's very true with the healthcare system as well. I think it forced a massive acceleration, and I think it also, in a certain way, forced many users to try for the first time. I think there's been a lot of data published, notably in the US, around the fact that the hardest thing to do in telehealth is getting someone to try it the first time, and then it creates a stickiness because you have this reassurance that this is not that different in the end, and you can have actually a positive experience. The hardest time is the first time. And we've seen, if we look at the use case in the US, right, we quickly went from a 2-3% market share for telehealth against physical visits, went to 30% during COVID, and now it's kind of stabilizing back at 15%, and not expected to go lower than that. And you see that you're probably convinced that this is also going to be the same in Europe. There's no reason for this. I think the other really interesting indicators is it's pushing, not just digital health adoption, but many people in the value chain to change. So at Teleclinic, we're seeing there's a clearly a pre-COVID and a post-COVID on how doctors are interested to join the platform, use that solution to connect with their patients. Right? The rate of new doctors joining Teleclinic is immensely bigger now than it was a year ago, because doctors are also realizing this is something that their patient wants, and they need to stay relevant in a certain way to keep their activity growing. And it's also helping the insurance. Would a deal like the ones we've heard a few weeks ago between Microsoft and AXA happen to create a digital health platform, a digital ecosystem happen a year or two ago? Maybe, but I would tend to think probably not. Right? The priorities have changed. So I think there's really been a tremendous progress, and it will continue. As everything in healthcare, it takes time, and it also takes time for the good reason, like we see with the DIGA reform. It's a fast track. I think, Guido, you mentioned it's the right word that some people tend to forget. It's a fast track for now, because it's also the ask that you need to come back and bring evidence to the system and to the payers in a year to justify this staying true in the future. And that's the logical thing to do in healthcare, right? And that will take time, but I think that will also make the system more permanent, because it's actually starting to be built on solid foundation, which is the system want to reimburse solid solutions. So I really don't think it's going away. I think now the trick is to work as a community around how do we drive more patients to use it? How do we make the system more comfortable with it? And I think the other thing to this fast track points is how do we enable innovators to generate more and more data quickly to justify their outcome, impact on cost, or any other outputs that they need to continue to convince doctors to prescribe and insurers to reimburse. But it's really the beginning of the story in Europe, and I don't see any reason it will go backwards.
Great. I love the optimism. I want to ask a challenging question maybe to Amir. Just imagine now post-COVID world, the payers and the systems are kind of broke because they spent a lot on various things in this. Now you're increasing sort of number of interventions in a way by offering more in a digital way, and it becomes convenient. We saw in some of the research in US that actually, you know, telemedicine does, or some of these digital health solutions, especially now we see trends of combining telemedicine and chronic care management, they do actually reduce cost. But then at the same time, you know, because it's so convenient, patients use them more. So it's not like a zero-sum game. And then in preventions, they're very helpful, but you know, it offset the budget planning period. These are some practicalities. So given all these complexities that I'm mentioning, I just want to also ask challenging questions. I mean, do you see actually a really kind of, especially European payers, being still open to it, to this innovation and etc. Or under which conditions? Because the reason why I'm asking you, you spoke also about demonstrating value. Would you see, and what would be important? We have a lot of care participants that are also in the wellness arena that are coming before the disease journey in the prevention space and so forth. Like that's kind of a little bit where my mind is going now, and I would like to challenge again to kind of reconsider this topic. So maybe Amir, you can share some of your reflections.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. I can try, and indeed we can talk about it for hours, and there are a lot of complexities. And I think that basically when we're talking about the value, we are talking about what is the tool that we can provide to the ecosystem in order to create this value. And value is also a general word that we are using, but value to whom? Is it value to the patient? For example, talking about the data, right? So data is something that pharmaceutical company can use in order to improve the drug development, also to learn about patient life cycle day to day, because now we have ears and eyes into the day to day. We understand better the patient by collecting the data. We can help patients in a better way. Patients can understand better about their life, about their disease, about their well-being, and how to connect it with the rest of the activities that they have. So it's beyond the drug, beyond the pill. It's connecting all together. And talking about the physician, also to get the reports and to learn about the patient, decide about treatments. So I think that the most important is which tool are we going to use in order to bring real value. And I see that we are trying, since we are in the middle of this revolution, we're trying to push a lot of digital tools that probably some of them will survive and will be connected into platforms in the future. Like we saw in the 80s when we talked about software and clouds. So probably like, and again, this is my personal opinion, I think that if we bring one platform and one point of care to patients, they will be able to better engage and to gain more value out of it. So, and I can give an example. If you have an app to collect manual information from patients without real connection to the drug, it will be hard to engage patient day to day to fill manual data. The data should be trustable, reliable, easy collected. It should be with one language, so physician understand the data in the same way that the patient understand, and also the payer see the data for reimbursement purposes. So this is really important, and I think that COVID created, and I agree with Sylvain about force us and all players to understand that this is not nice to have anymore. And of course, future-wise, we all see this will come eventually, right? And probably 10 years from now or 15 years from now, it will be like all of us having a smartphone today. But I think that COVID accelerated a lot, because now it's not nice to have, it's a real need by patients, because they cannot have a visit the physician like every time. They cannot understand about what is going on with the treatment, with the day-to-day life, and how can they explain and bring this data to the physician in order to take better decision or better treatment. So if they cannot go there and visit, so they prefer not to go there, and and this is a problem. And now using those tools, it's kind of to solve this problem that was created, and now it's a need. And when a patient understands this need, I think that then we see better engagement. Then we see better understanding about why this tool is needed. And I think that this understanding is crucial in order to engage the whole ecosystem into the new digital.
Amir, Guido, same question to you, and then there are a couple of questions from audience that also brings me to my next question. So Guido, you as an investor, you must have some investment thesis. So is your thesis that more public money or payer money will go into this space?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult always to know the right timing of political decisions and when political developments take place. So if you look back, I think it was already talked about in Germany back in 2007 that the electronic patient record will be introduced soon. And still, this is something where it finally comes to a reality now. But of course, I mean, we expect that reimbursement pathways will only become better in the future and build upon that. And that's also been one of the factors which back in the days made us invest into Teleclinic, which then has finally been acquired by Zur Rose last year. So it was quite a bit of a leap of faith that we had to take at the time, but I think it finally played out. And what I can see is certainly that this development will continue, and it will certainly even do more so because of COVID. I mean, what is kind of a paradox situation, however, is that we would have expected for other solutions, for example, in disease management, to benefit from this massively as well, which in a way they also did. But what you can see, I found what was particularly interesting is that patients actually take care of their basic needs. And as we heard, they use a lot of telemedicine services, but they might have become a little bit more reluctant to take care of what you would call non-critical diseases in a way. This might also cover diseases like diabetes type 2, but if you have a problem that requires a behavioral change, for example, or a lifestyle intervention, and you might have difficulties to motivate yourself to go to a doctor, to go, for example, also to a nutritionist or other coaches, then a digital solution seems to be, seems to be the ideal solution for the problems we have at hand right now with the pandemic. But still you see that people are lagging a little bit behind. So this is not to say that these startups in these areas are not benefiting from it. The contrary is true. But it's interesting that patients are just a little bit more reluctant to use them than they would have been otherwise, for example, because now they just have other everyday issues. They might have lost their job. They might be subject to a pay cut. They might have to take care of their kids at home. They have stressful jobs. So we expect this to normalize in the midterm at least, but certainly, of course, we build on further reimbursement in the future. This is not to say, however, that we would blindly invest in just any solution that has no revenue at all. But what I like is if you have an entrepreneur or a founding team that is very well aware of the challenges that lie in monetization, and that takes the challenges one after the other, one step at a time, that lie ahead of them. And this is also what you could see, since we talked about it, for example, with Teleclinic, like a few years back, they were only able to conduct consultations with out-of-pocket payers, and they were not even allowed to issue a diagnosis or a prescription or a sick leave. So this was only for a very small group of early adopters. And then as regulation was liberalized in a way, if you will, they were able to strike partnerships with private insurers. They were able to create business out of that, create revenue out of that, and position the company to be in a very good spot to benefit from the regulation opening up towards the real reimbursement. So they had quite a big market share on the private insurer side already. They had experience with users with different use cases already. They had experience in the customer support and so on and so forth. And this ultimately was a very big benefit to them in building on the company. Would we have invested in case they had not created any revenue at all? Very unlikely, right? Because if you don't have any business going on, you also don't, as an investor, you don't really know how to make a judgment of the company. You don't really know if the team is able to sell to somebody. You don't really know how the customer experience is. You don't really know which problems they are solving. So you need that market feedback, even if it's only on a very low level, but the fantasy needs to be there that in the future, this is something that can run through reimbursement as well. Or it can be a 100% B2C product, but this, of course, is only possible for I would say, certain share of the digital health universe when it comes to the startups we're seeing.
Guido, so great. I mean, in summary, just in one sentence, there is a positive outlook as long as we demonstrate the value, and that's great. Now, I will break a little bit the dynamics of asking question and responding. There are actually a couple of questions from the audience that I want to address, and I will address them in the kind of inverse order that we received, because the first question that we received actually was almost very similar to my next question to the panelists. So one is, whoever is comfortable picking this one up, how do you evaluate digital therapeutic approaches focusing on, long-term COVID issues like cognitive impairment after infection or other, we saw the research from UK coming and talking about actually increased cardiovascular problems and so forth. Will you think that's kind of going to be a significant segment, or this is something that's too short-living? It happens now, and as the pandemic goes away, this will go away. So I don't know if anybody is comfortable to kind of pick this one without calling you, but I mean, that was something we received from the audience. And then there are two more questions.
Yeah, I mean, I can try to take that one. So, I mean, obviously, it's hard to make a judgment on if the pandemic is going to last for a very long time or a long time or a not so long time. So I think we are not in a position that we know more about the pandemic than other market participants know, right? So it's something where, at least when starting to think about it now, I would say it could be something that could serve as a door opener for something different. So it could be something to get patients into solutions and maybe strike the first deals, but to have something also in the nature of a DTX attached to it that could be used for different diseases as well. Or it could also be that you have an existing company that is a DTX company already now also offering this kind of product on top of what is doing already, so that it's not a standalone, but that it's kind of a product extension, if you will. So if that's a company where we believe in the core product that they have already, this could be a booster towards allowing them to accelerate, to iterate a little bit quicker on the user side, and also by that create more traction without being completely dependent on this COVID issue. It's honestly, however, it's hard to judge it only from this one aspect. So there would need to be a lot more information on it, I guess, for us.
Anyone else to add anything on this question?
No, I would say I agree with your view, Guido. It's probably hard to make like a start from scratch and build a business around the long COVID, because also we don't know enough about it. Really, the science is just starting here. But I think, you know, there are now a lot of really highly qualified applications whose ultimate goal is to follow a certain number of biomarkers and for then a doctor to be able to judge what's going on. And ultimately long COVID is starting to have some of these biomarkers, and you track, you mentioned even cardiovascular issues, so you could potentially track, you know, blood pressure or so other data you can measure at home. And as long as you have to connect with a doctor at the end, you could probably build the beginning of a business around here. You know, there are companies like, think about Huma, was launched in Germany, you know, very quickly, an app that enables doctors to be able to track, you know, remote monitor after COVID vaccinations and be able to do this. It's probably not a business standalone, but they're able to build that on top of an existing business because they have the building blocks. So I can see more business case around that than, you know, the My Sugar of long COVID coming tomorrow on the market as a standalone application.
Thank you. I think the next question from the audience, and please keep asking questions, we'll answer as you see, is perfect for you, Amir. So what are some great examples of regulatory approved RX plus DTX pairing? If you have in your mind, probably in your like rich experience across pharma where you worked on even first product, you came across, you know, some analysis. So maybe, you know, it's a good thing to reflect on.
Yeah, I think that I can probably mention the product that now it's in the market, and I worked on this product for the past 6 years. It was the first digital health product for asthma and COPD patients. So we had, and now you can find HCPs together with patients. Patients are being prescribed with the inhaler, which is a smart inhaler with a sensor, with electronics embedded inside the mechanical inhaler. And then you have the companion, the software companion, to connect between the software and the drug. And the process starts with a prescription by the physician as a drug, goes through the day-to-day life of patients, installing the app and work with the inhaler, collect measurements and collect day-to-day activities and the technique of how to use the drug. And this data being uploaded into the cloud, and then HCPs or physicians will be able to read real-time data from this usage by patients. And I think this is a good example because we see a product which is kind of connecting all players together, as we mentioned in the beginning of the call. So we have a prescribed drug with the software, connect to the physician. Then we have the whole operating model to support it, and create also one language for sharing the same data between all stakeholders. So you can see, for example, patient is being able to share a report of the day-to-day activity with the drug. So when did I use the drug? How did I use it? What were the other aspects of my day-to-day? Let's say, for example, there is also, as part of this product, we saw also the weather information, which is kind of like the very generic for the patient's life. And to add that together with the drug usage and collect all together, you can see one picture of patient life, and the patient will be able to track it, to learn, and to mirror, to reflect his own life. Better learn about it and better change the behavior if they would like. And also the physician to get the same information in real time without the need for a physical visit. So I think this is like a good example of connecting like prescription drug with the software, with the whole ecosystem around it.
Right, thank you, Amir. Now, continuing on this train of thoughts, right? One of the questions I had for audience, it looks like also in this field, it's the partnerships are very important, right? And there are various partnerships. I mean, you as pharma, you partner with digital health solution. Consumer health companies are partnering with some digital health to create wellness solutions. And then there is like the whole kind of large range of things putting everyone together in a kind of a broad ecosystem. So I just wanted to ask you to reflect on these partnership points and how to make them work. And I would start back, Amir, with you, because also the product you worked was probably partly developed in partnership. And then Sylvain, you're kind of like the integrator across many. So maybe you can pick after Amir on this question.
Yeah, I think that partnership is really important also in the design phase to understand the needs and to integrate the system into other systems, existing systems. Like, for example, if you want to use this data and to add additional data into that. So you would like maybe to integrate with other apps in the market, like Apple Health Kit or other measurements that are being collected, because it's important to see the whole picture together. And we have so many tools. We would like to provide one picture to the patient and physician so they can have the holistic view. And I think that working with partners, this is very important in the design phase, to understand the need, to create one language, to create APIs. And when I say APIs, those are like the software APIs, not the pharma APIs that we are familiar with, is to connect different tools together. Talking about Emr Integration, to connect, if we can use the DGL example, so the data that's being collected, how to connect and integrate to other hospitals and records that patients might have, and to provide all together to the physician. I think this is like, in my experience, having this dialogue in advance and understand how you can like design the product with the partners is very important.
Right, and then coming back to Sylvain, I mean, on the business model side, I mean, you've also partnered a lot, but you are actually an integrator of many partnerships in one place with your ambition to transform patient journey. So can you give some reflections on this topic as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll jump in on something you said, Amir, which is, it's the importance of partnership is really to bring complementary skills and expertise to the benefit of, the patient or the people suffering from a condition. I think, healthcare is difficult and you need a lot to bring together to make it work, especially, as the industry moves from being very, maybe doctor-centric to a bit more patient-centric. And so I would say that that's clearly the focus that we have at the Zur Rose Group, is to bring different skills together and perspective to help address large conditions. And we've been able to achieve that already with for people living with obesity. We launched just a few weeks ago a new healthcare journey and experience for people with obesity, and we brought together our pharmacy brand in Germany, Doc Morris, Teleclinic as a software to connect doctors with a pharma company, Novo Nordisk, and with digital health players, in the case, Digas, Zanagio, and Selfapi. And so that's not necessarily a marriage that is obvious from the start, bringing pharmacy, doctors, pharma together in digital health and trying to work. But I think it works because I would say there's two things that are important in this partnership. First, kind of having the same goal and the same view that we want to change something in the system and offer something better, in this case, for people living with obesity, and that's the ambition. and the ambition is not necessarily tied to a very narrow view of the world. Let's say my sales of my product next quarter, because that's not going to work. It needs to be broader than this and be considered as open. So we're working, with a set of partners, and this is meant to grow. So it's kind of creating a better experience for that all the players can benefit, but all the right players can benefit and all the curated players can benefit. And I think the other aspect that is important is we don't view that as a pilot, right? It's not another, let's try for 6 months. There's not a clear business model. And there's always this risk that, then we're not able to prove something because you didn't really know what you're looking to prove. I think what's really important and what has worked for, at least in our case and the experience we have working with this different set of partners, is very clear from the start. This is what we're looking, this is what defines success, and we're going to try to measure that. And that might not be measured in sales, that might be measured in something else. How are we able to engage with people? How are we able to help them go from never talking to a doctor about their weight to actually engaging a doctor about their weight? And we're trying to measure things in different terms. But I think, and of course, there should be a business, an economic and financial impact at the end for everybody, because everybody here is a business. But the fundamentals is we're trying to be driven by a bigger ambition and trying to be sure that we're not just doing this for 6 months, but we have a long-term view. And then I think we can make it work. And I think that's what has been very interesting also in the last 1 or 2 years is I think everybody has also realized that a little bit more in the system, and that kind of different people have a different role to play. As a pharmacy, I think we're very good at engaging people. People know our trust and trust our brand, which a pharma company is probably less well positioned right now. But a pharma company brings lots of expertise, credibility, and know-how about conditions and how to best address them. And actually putting this together in one experience just creates something better, as long as we're completely aligned on what we're doing this for.
Right. Thank you, Sylvain. And brings me, as you mentioned, point of a business model, and there were a couple of questions from the audience coming, and there was also one question that I prepared in advance. We talk a lot about access and reimbursement in Europe, in particular, from public payers and health systems. But I know, Sylvain, for example, even in your language, you don't call people patients, you call them consumers, because they might actually want to have some wellness things, and some of the things come out of pocket. And so to start this round with Guido, I mean, what other business models, Guido, can you see? Because, I mean, we're talking about public payer, but there could be other things. And to relate to that, there were really two questions of the audience, if you want to use them as a kind of like, there was one around elaborating reimbursement for monitoring patients via connected devices in home in relation to patient models. And the other one was really kind of, could you also see consumer paying out of pocket for digital interventions that provide them data, that improve their self-care or even wellness, and that they can bring to their HCP or whoever is the coach? So, few questions sticking the same point. What are the options for other business models, how to monetize some of this data and so forth? So maybe this round we start with you, Guido, as you're seeing a lot of companies, and then I'll pass it to others.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, overall, there's a large variety of business models that I've seen in the last 8 years. So, I mean, a couple of years back, it was, reimbursement was just even more difficult than it was now, or almost impossible for digital solutions. So what companies did, of course, is build on B2C or direct to consumer models. So that means that either they try to monetize their applications with advertisements, or they try to charge for the app, or they had a subscription in place. And obviously it's, of course, was usually quite tough to get to a significant revenue level, right? So company where I remember that they started with such a model as well is My Sugar from Austria, where we were also an early investor. And at the time, they, of course, were selling app subscriptions to consumers or patients for their diabetes management solutions. And when looking at the case, I remember very well that we said from an investor's point of view, this might be a nice business to earn some kind of revenue with it, but the real value will lie in proving that it saves cost for the healthcare system, right? In one way or the other. So we try to wrap our heads around it, and finally also ended up investing in the company. But it's been a very, very, very long way since having invested, I think, in early 2014 until they were able and it was possible to strike partnership with health insurances and build other business on top, for example, with medtech companies, where there was a possibility to have a benefit from selling insulin strips, for example. And I mean, this is just only one company, but already you can see that there are at least 3 different kinds of business models incorporated in it, which of course rest in partnering with different stakeholders in the healthcare system. So I would not only say that it depends on the solution that you would like to sell, but on top of that, it also depends on in what phase or stage of your company you are in, and what kind of business model you can roll out already, and how much proof or how much evidence do you have in place already. So you might very well start with the B2C monetization, and looking at the example here, the monitoring solution for patients at home that might, for example, also work with devices that you install in an apartment, that you install in a home care facility that monitors if people fall. So fall prevention, fall detection solution. Yeah, who could you sell this to? I mean, obviously you could sell it to people who pay for it directly. So it's an out-of-pocket product. You could sell it to people that are taking care of elderly persons, for example, so to their families. In some cases, maybe even to elderly persons themselves. You could sell it to home care facilities so that you have larger sales tickets at least. But in this very particular case, at least, unfortunately, at least not in Europe, I have not seen a company that has built a very, very interesting and scalable solution on top of that. Maybe it still comes in the future, but I haven't seen it yet, at least for this fall detection use case. You wanted to say something? Sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, one example comes to mind is the company called Med Device Massimo. You know, they have sensors. I wonder if the reimbursement path could also go via home care in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it might also come to some kind of reimbursement. I mean, if you're able to, for example, prove that you really solve or you save a lot of costs attached to it if you have fall prevention or detection, if you have a set of patients where you can show that they recover a lot faster, that it saves costs in paying hospitals and so on and so forth. I could imagine that with a lot of sales power, you could be able to, for example, convince a private insurance to enter into a bilateral deal with you, so that they're saying, okay, if we have patients in our population that fulfill certain demographic criteria or have one or the other indication, or that live, for example, in a home care facility, we do a cost benefit analysis of your product, and if it saves us costs, and as private insurers in Germany, they fully internalize all the costs, then there could be a case for you. But I haven't calculated it, so I don't know.
No, very good. Right? No, thank you, Guido. And just a quick question to also to Sylvain. Do you think, very briefly, you know, do you think consumers are also ready to pay out of pocket, and for what? Because I know you look at number of these, Sylvain, across the year, over the year.
So I would say yes, but to a certain narrow set of health issues or conditions. I think even I've experienced this myself in my past life working at Walgreens, where, you know, you think Americans are used to pay everything out of pocket and they have high deductibles. But even spending, you know, $50 on a connected device for asthma, which we tried, was extremely difficult to convince, because it's not a problem of even willingness to pay. It's a mindset. You're not supposed to pay for this. It comes bundle. It's with your doctor. You're paying that in your head differently. However, you look at a company like Roman, hims, hers, and some of the European players in that space around hair loss, sexual wellness, weight loss, some of these areas that are closer to consumers where traditionally, anyway, your healthcare professional, your doctor is not really going to be the one helping you that you want to talk about those things with. They're billions of dollars in sales in the US, and it's completely out of pocket in a completely separate system. And it's all worked as an experience where, everything looks great. It's all bundled, your medication, your consultation, it's home delivered. It's a, kind of Netflix type of experience. But these companies are doing great growth. And we see Newman, for example, in the UK, they're growing very fast on these markets. But I don't think this model can extend to then manage diabetes the same way. It's just not the same healthcare issue. So I think you kind of have to have a world that is consumer-led, and you see the success of Calm and Headspace, right? They're able to sell, and they will sell products, and they will sell more and more things in their lane. And then the other chronic heart conditions, you have to kind of find a model that is going to be more linked to public reimbursement, payers, and ultimately, I think, we don't see that yet in Europe. I would say this is the beginning. There's a case I would mention in Switzerland where now you have more and more insurers in Switzerland that are, working with certain groups of doctors where if you're tracking diabetes, and if you're tracking, have you done your HbA1c, have you done an eye test, a feet test this year, and you're able to tick that boxes, you kind of have a premium from your insurers. And it's just kind of the beginning of what we maybe see in the US, kind of value-based, performance-based scheme. And I think that's really where the market ultimately is going to have to go, so that digital health are just a normal part of healthcare, because everybody is just trying to, let's manage you better at a lower cost. And there's a kind of a bonus associated to this for the people who are delivering the care. But it's going to take a while, don't get me wrong. It's still just beginning in the US, and we've been saying it for 10 years. But it's kind of ultimately where we have to go anyway.
Well, we have 4 minutes left, and I want to leave 3 minutes for a last reflection from each of you. But just one question I cannot resist not to ask you. Do you think what you're doing with ecosystems and what Amazon had just announced yesterday, that they will enter now with Amazon Care in 51 states in the United States, will accelerate this? If you could give a quick answer. I have to ask this question. It's a big announcement, but you also had a big one in Europe, so.
Yes, well, quick answer to Amazon is hard, but I would say, the way I would answer that question, and I've been living the Amazon effect in directly being at Walgreens when they bought PillPack, is, ultimately, it's a great catalyst for everybody, because it forces everybody to react, to take it seriously, and there's never been more innovation in CVS, Walgreens, other brands in the US than since Amazon bought PillPack. And I think that's in a way the positive effect that we need to use also in Europe to stimulate investments and to stimulate change, so that in a certain way we evolve before they come. And that's kind of the way we see our reaction in the Zur Rose Group as well. We're looking at becoming more than a pharmacy before they even start being a pharmacy, to keep a step ahead. Whether they come or not, I don't know. I don't have that answer. I'm sure they will. Or maybe they won't, who knows, but I think it's the right catalyst to the system in any case, and that's how I choose to use them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this answer and positive outlook. Now, in final 3 minutes, just final reflections, both, some of the kind of two things, your reflections and advice for companies in the field, and if there's anything that you think, a message for community, how to accelerate building these opportunities for digital health players, but also for the benefits of the patient. So maybe Amir, you can start with the short answer, and then Guido and Sylvain to close.
Yeah, we have only 2 minutes, so we'll try to be very short. I think that the focus should be on the need. We see a lot of tools that we're all trying to push into the market, and eventually the holistic view and understanding why do we bring this platform and who is going to use it, what is it that we are trying to solve, to ask ourselves the why, to find the need, and to tailor a solution which will be able to integrate with other solutions in the future. So I think this is like the key aspect of finding the right solution and architecture for new products.
Thank you, Amir. Guido, your final reflections on this question.
Yeah, so I think as soon as the solution is more than a lifestyle solution, or meaning it has some medical aspect to it, I think it's usually of essential nature that you have the ability to strike the right partnerships overall. So that it needs to be a crucial element of what you're doing as an entrepreneur. And you need to be very well aware of that. You cannot just move fast and break things like it might be the case in other startup verticals or industries, but you need to understand very well what the different stakeholders actually want and who is the best partner for you and whom to focus your energy on to strike this partnership with. So I think this is something that requires a lot more strategic thinking than might already be the case for other startup industries.
Thank you so much. And Sylvain, onus is on you to close the panel.
Well, I'll start with a positive note. I think my first reaction is that I don't think there's ever been a better time to be in this space than right now, especially in Europe, because we're at the beginning of the beginning, and it's extremely exciting years ahead. So I think it's the right time to be in that space. And then I would say my advice, I completely agree with my fellow panelists, which is like, you have pick a lane. Are we looking at lifestyle consumers and that's one focus, or you're looking at chronic conditions and then focus on clinical evidence and building partnerships. And I would say the last time I would react to one word, Ivan, you use is community. I think there's more progress to be done to actually work as a community around digital health. I think there's a lot of great progress. I think I'm always amazed by what the Digitale Spitzenverband has been able to do in Germany in bringing together different players in the digital health world and bring some weight to, I would say, the institutions. And I think we need to do that even more and bring together pharma, pharmacists, digital health, and bring more weight into influencing the transformation in the system so it goes faster where we want it to go.
Great. Thank you, Sylvain. We are over time. I just want to thank everyone for great energy, super discussion, a lot of insights, and also for the audience for the patience to listen to us. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the panel.
And I will say thank you very much, Ivan, for your great moderation. Thank you to the panel. Really wonderful discussion. Just so much information and so much thought-provoking details coming out. And of course, thanks to our audience. Really appreciate you sticking with us and being so interactive and engaged and asking lots of questions. Do stick around. We've got our CBD panel coming up in an hour from now. We'd love to see you there. And then, of course, we're rounding out with our Ask the Investors panel. Some incredible investors, including Founders Factory and What If Ventures, so big names in mental health, and really love to see you there. But in the meantime, I will say thank you so much to Ivan and our panel, and goodbye.